But we do want to talk about this other thing real quick in the NFL, and that's Andrew Berry was on Sirius XM radio. They do their training camp tours. And he was asked who is the most underrated player on the roster. And his answer was Tyson Campbell. Do you guys agree? I mean, how would we even determine who's underrated?
Yeah.
I can't think of a single player on the Browns who I think Tyson Campbell's a good player. I think most people think he's a good player. Like, if you're not a Browns fan or a national media member, you're not going to know how to rate Tyson Campbell, nor would I know how to rate an equivalent player on your team. So I think it's
well, the GM probably knows how to rate.
If anyone can answer this question, it's probably
It's the
Andrew
general
Berry
manager.
for what it's worth.
But who's he being underrated by?
I probably because he's never talked about. Whoever talks about Tyson Campbell.
But who talks about any corner? Corners don't get talked about very often.
We've spent a ton of time on Denzel Ward this offseason.
But
Because
again,
Denzel Ward's a Pro Bowl player.
you're asking the general manager who needs talked about more. He's telling you who needs talked about more.
Well, that's not what he said.
But that's kind of what he said. That's what underrated
so you
is.
think do we think he's underrated?
I thought he was. It was a great trade.
He's a good player.
I joked off air. That's just Barry giving himself credit for the trade.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a great trade.
Do you think there's anybody on the Browns that is underrated?
Yeah.
Who?
Malik Collins. Now, granted, he has to come back to being the player he was, but that was a signing that last season we all kind of scoffed at, and no biggie, except for Tyvis Powell, who was in this chair where I'm sitting and said, that dude can play. I promise you, I played with him, and that dude can play. Before the time of his injury, he led all interior defensive linemen in sacks, 6.5.
Yeah.
Before he got hurt, he was on not just a Pro Bowl pace, an all-pro pace with his production from the interior. It was a guy I didn't think had any level of production to that level inside him. He proved me wrong. I underrated how good Malik Collins was at the signing. He'd be my answer to who's the most underrated player on the Browns, because I don't think any of us thought he was as good as he was in his first season in Cleveland. He has to get back to that. Granted, coming off a serious lower body injury. Andrew Berry, Todd Monken, they've all said he's on track to return. But that would be my pick for the most underrated player. But Tyson Campbell was a Pro Bowler before they acquired him. We know Tyson Campbell was a good player.
Think he's underrated.
I don't think Malik Collins was on the same level.
I actually think you make a good case for Malik Collins. I think it's hard with football because if you're not a skill position player,
Most guys are anonymous.
You're pretty anonymous for outside of a couple of pass rushers. We talk a lot about Denzel Ward, but people don't in general when from the national stage, you're not talking about corners very often. But I think you make a good point. If I had to pick anybody, Malik Collins would be a fair choice, I think.
You just because we're mentioning defensive tackles, I think you'll find it. I just started working on a piece where I'm building the case that defensive tackles are now level to defensive ends in terms of value to teams. If you watch the way that teams are valuing positions, defensive tackle used to be a throwaway spot, right? It was always end. And look at the money. That's going to tackles.
Quinnen Williams just got paid.
100. That's what.
But he's not getting paid as much as Myles Garrett.
Well, there's. I mean, Myles is a unicorn.
Yeah.
And Myles, Will Anderson, Micah
Parsons.
those guys are in their own category. Yeah. But once you get beyond the top 3 or 4, if you look at the way defenses are building, it's the middle now. It's the middle rush.
Because you want to get that pressure up the middle.
If Aaron Donald was in his prime right now,
he'd get as much.
He'd get as much as Myles Garrett, I think.
Yeah.
And you're trying to take away.
And that's no knock on Myles. That's just how good Aaron Donald was.
I'm calling it a knock.
When you're bringing pressure, if you bring pressure from the middle, where's the quarterback? You can't. You come from the end, you climb the pocket.
Right.
But if it's coming from the middle, where's the quarterback supposed to go? And when you look at the Micah trade, the name escaped. Who's the tackle that the Cowboys wanted?
B.J. Raji?
No.
They want
the tackle that went from the Packers to the Cowboys.
Rashawn Gary.
Well, no, they traded for Frank Clark.
That's it.
Kenny Clark.
Clark.
We got there eventually.
We'll get there. But just the importance, I just think that defensive tackle is one of those positions that is, you talk about the devaluation of running back. Yeah. I think defensive tackle has really been it's been pushed the last couple of years.
And those guys are getting drafted higher and higher and higher.
I mean, Mason Graham.
Well, not only Mason Graham, but when the Browns drafted Mason Graham, we made the graphic of the last 5 defensive tackles drafted in the top 5. And it had been a while. Quinnen Williams was the last before that. But in the top 10, you have your Jalen Carters, who's turned out to be an incredible defensive tackle. Derek Brown was a 7th overall pick out of Auburn. He went to the Carolina Panthers, just got paid. More and more emphasis is being put on that position because if you can get pressure from the interior, like you said, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
You can shift the line. You can roll the pocket out to get away from an edge rusher if he's coming from a certain side. You can't escape the middle. You can't snap the ball from your left tackle.
I just get
Doesn't work like
I
that.
just get fascinated at like the evolution of things.
Yeah.
I think B.J. Raji retired like 20 years
He
ago.
did. He was a Packer, though. Like, you
Yeah,
got that
he was.
right.
But
Earl, who do you think?
I'm only off by a couple of decades.
Most
got a
underrated
good one
player
for
on the
y'all.
I
Cleveland
pulled a
Browns.
Colin Cowherd.
I got a great one for y'all.
Oh, let me
The
guess.
most underrated player on the Browns is Dylan
Gabriel?
Sampson. That he is. Gotcha.
Ooh, okay. Okay. Hey, I want, hey, and if you're clipping the show, make that a social. Earl Malden, most underrated player of the Browns, Dylan, period, end quote.
Yes.
Sampson. No, the reason why I think that is because when you look at his college tape, he was a very explosive player, a home run hitter, a guy that was like a dual threat. He could run the football and he could catch the ball out the backfield. And I think in Todd Monken's offense, he's going to have more of a defined role than what he did with Kevin Stefanski. But even last year, you've seen the home run ability. And I just think that he can be a guy that's an underrated weapon because he wasn't utilized right last year.
Maybe so, but I think it's hard to call him underrated at this point because he didn't do much as a rookie.
Yeah, I like
He
the
didn't
word.
have much of a chance. Now, you might be right, and he might do more, but, I mean, he averaged 2.8 yards a carry, you know.
I like the word underutilized more than underrated at this point of his career. Because, Earl, I agree with you. He could be an offensive weapon. He's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. He's going to be their primary third down back now in a lot of the passing situations.
Is he? We know that for sure?
That's how Todd Monken said he wanted to use him as a third down back. Yeah. So.
I'd have
Once again,
I'd play Quinshon Judkins on every
we
play.
know you don't trust the word Todd Monken
I don't
says.
trust
So
anything he
just
says.
because he said Dylan Sampson's our third down back does not mean
No.
he actually will be their third
Do
down
you
back.
trust that boy?
I think Dylan Sampson's too little to be used on any kind of regular basis.
Well, a third down back's not a regular basis.
Well,
Gotcha.
if you bring coming in all the time on third down, that's a lot. I don't expect
Especially on
that
the
to
Browns
happen.
offense. There's a lot
Yeah,
of third downs.
Browns are a lot of third downs.
What?
Yeah,
That was last year. We won't be in third down all like that this time.
All right.
I don't know.
I just think
man.
it's hard to say someone's underrated until they have the
Yeah,
production,
they
which is why
right.
for Malik Collins, like he proved he was way better than I ever anticipated him
Yes.
being. I didn't have that expectation going
Yes.
in.
I'm curious, when Todd Monken names a starter, are you going to believe him?
Nope.
If anyone missed the first segment of today's show, I highly, highly, highly recommend you going back and watching the first segment of today's show where we discussed Todd Monken's explanation to the switcheroo at quarterback
Yeah.
from Saturday. It was peak bowl for good and bad reasons, but it was peak
I
bowl.
don't think there were any bad reasons, but I said all honest thoughts.
Unfiltered
That's
bowl.
it. That's it. You don't
Do
like
you
honesty,
believe
then-
he stopped and got morning coffee on the way to the facility in Berea today?
What's that?
Do you believe that Todd Monken stopped to get his coffee on the way to Berea today?
Did he say he did?
I don't know, but do you believe it? Let's say he did.
No, they have coffee there.
I would say he's lying, and that he has an agenda to lie when he really wants to drink the free Browns coffee, but he doesn't want the rest of us to know that there's coffee for the Browns.
I don't know if it's any good, though. I've never had the Browns.
It's probably not. It's probably not. You'd think a team named the Browns could make good coffee.
You would hope.
Apparently not. When we come back, a crazy play and a retiree who got really retired a few years ago.